I spent 2 months clearing brush, grading dirt, and laying gravel to build a road to my own farm, on my own land, paid for every inch of it myself. And the day it was finally finished, the HOA put up a steel gate right in the middle of it and told me I had to pay $180 a month to use my own road. They thought I'd just roll over. They were wrong. I was raised to believe a man should be able to reach his own home without asking permission. My name's Cole Carter. I'm 41 years old, and I work a patch of land in the north part of Clearbrook County, right where the tree line breaks into wheat fields, and the wind smells like dust and grass instead of asphalt and lawn fertilizer. My dad worked this same land, my grandfather before him. We don't have much in this family, not in terms of stocks or retirement funds or beach houses, but we've always had this dirt we worked, dirt we paid taxes on, dirt we stood on with our own boots, and I swear to God, it ought to mean something. But somewhere along the line, the world started filling up with people who don't understand the idea of earned ground. People who think a form and a committee and a neighborhood ordinance outrank the work a man puts in with his own hands. And that's where this whole thing starts. Not with anger, not with revenge, just with a road. See, the only road in and out of my farm ran straight through Clearbrook Meadows, a suburban development with cream-colored houses, perfect hedges, and an HOA that believed they were the Vatican of lawn care. Now, I didn't mind the looks. I'm used to people staring at my truck like it's a wild animal. But they had rules, and those rules didn't leave room for work. They didn't leave room for dust, or diesel, or time, or reality. They banned heavy vehicles from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Let me say that again. They banned farm trucks during farm hours, meaning if I wanted to haul feed, deliver hay, move seed, or take produce to market, I had to either do it at night or not do it at all. And that, for a farm, is the same as a noose. I tried working around it. I tried negotiating politely. I tried scheduling everything at dawn and dusk. But the truth is, crops don't care about HOA meeting schedules. Livestock don't care about community tranquility guidelines. I was losing money, fast. Every week, I was either late delivering or I couldn't make a run at all. Buyers stopped calling. The farm dipped into savings. And pretty soon, I was sitting at my kitchen table staring at unpaid invoices and thinking real hard about my father's face if he were still alive to see it. That's when I remembered the old road. Back behind the far pasture, there's a strip of overgrown county right-of-way. Used to be a service road back in the 60s before the new state road went in. Half of it lies on my property. The other half is technically public easement the county hasn't touched in decades. I hadn't thought about that road in years. But the morning I found myself parked outside the HOA office, waiting to request a permit to use the road to my own home, I realized something. If I didn't build that road, I wasn't going to have a farm left to save. So I walked out of there, got in my truck, drove straight to my daughter's place in town. Her name's Ellie. Studying civil engineering at the community college. Smart kid, steady hands. Heart a lot like her mother's used to be, quiet on the outside, wildfire underneath. I asked her if she wanted to help me bring back an old road. She didn't ask why, she just said, "Tell me where to start." We made calls, brought out Lane, friend of mine since high school, the kind of man who can fix a diesel engine with baling wire and a hammer if he has to. He had access to equipment, grader, brush cutter, old case dozer that still runs mean. And the three of us stood in the weeds that first morning, looking at a wall of thorn and choke vine and saplings with trunks like iron. Lane spit in the dirt and said, "Hell of a road you picked." I said, "It's the only one they can't control." So, we got to work. Clearing brush under a summer sun is the kind of work that doesn't need thinking. It's sweat and breath and rhythm. You swing, cut, drag, repeat. Ellie measured elevation grades while Lane graded surface. I hauled rock from the quarry. Day by day, foot by foot, the old road began to breathe again. I won't pretend it was beautiful at first. It was ugly, hard, mean. The kind of job that makes your hands bleed through gloves and your back feel like rebar. But there's a strange peace in using your body for something real, something that matters, something you know no one can take away from you. That's what I believed anyway, for now. Because at that time, I still thought the hardest part of this story would be the work. I hadn't yet met the gate, or what it meant, but I would. And when I did, everything changed. Most folks don't understand how a road begins. They see pavement and paint and think it's just there. But a road has a birth like anything else. It comes out of the ground slow, uneven, stubborn, like the land has to decide whether it's willing to let go. That old right-of-way had been swallowed by 20 years of brush and briar, saplings with trunks as thick as fence posts, vines twisted like something alive, thorns that grabbed your shirt sleeves and didn't let go. The first week didn't look like progress. It looked like a war we were losing. Lane worked the brush cutter on the front of the tractor, pushing forward a foot at a time, engine growling like a tired animal. Ellie walked ahead with a survey pole and a bright safety vest, marking grade lines and drainage angles, careful as a surgeon. I hauled branches, roots, broken fence wire, and rusted metal posts someone had dumped there decades back. By sundown every day, we were dirty from the eyebrows down, hands blistered, shoulders burning, sweat leaving tracks through dust. But I'll tell you something, there was peace in it, real peace, the kind you can feel in your ribs. Not the fake polite peace you get sitting in an HOA meeting, listening to someone with a pearl necklace explain how community standards must be preserved at all costs. No. This was honest work, clean in its own rough way. In the evenings, we'd sit on the tailgate of the truck, eat ham sandwiches, and look at the stretch we'd cleared. There wasn't much to see at first, just a corridor of raw dirt and hacked brush. But to us, it looked like freedom. One afternoon, Ellie wiped her forehead with the back of her glove and said, "People think roads are for going somewhere, but they're really for coming back." I just stared at her for a moment. Sometimes your kids say something so true, it hits you harder than anything the world throws. Lane snorted and said, "Kid, if you keep talking like that, we'll have to put your quotes on barn walls." She threw a pebble at him. We laughed the tired kind of laugh, the honest end-of-day laugh, and day by day, the ground gave way. When we finally got the path cleared, Lane brought in the grader. The rumble of that engine was something holy, metal against earth, man shaping the land just enough, not too much, not too little. Ellie checked the slopes and runoff angles so rain wouldn't wash us out come spring. We hauled gravel, truckload after truckload, and raked it level. Finally, the surface took shape, and one morning we stood there looking down at a lane of brand new gravel, running like a silver ribbon between the fence line and the tree shadows. It wasn't pretty yet, but it was real, and it was ours. I remember the exact moment the road became more than a project. It was the first time I drove the truck down it. I eased the pickup out of the barn, rolled onto that gravel, and felt the tires settle. No speed bumps, no cameras, no neighbors staring over hedge lines like you were a stray animal. Just open road, my road. And when I pulled up to the highway entrance, clean, direct, no detours through Clearbrook Meadows, something loosened inside my chest that I hadn't realized had been tight for months. I came home 2 hours earlier that day. 2 hours. Ellie was sitting on the hillside with Lane, both of them leaning back on their hands, watching the sun go down. I grabbed a couple of beers, sat with them, and we just watched the light fade off the gravel. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. For the first time in a long while, I felt like my life was something I was steering, not something I was being allowed. I thought that was the end of the struggle, that the worst was behind us, but I've learned something since. The moment something good takes shape, someone, somewhere, tries to take it from you, and they were already planning how. The first time she showed up, I heard her before I saw her. Not because she was loud, because she didn't belong there. There's a sound to a gravel farm road, trucks rumble, work boots scuff. Fence wire sings a little when the wind hits right, but high heels? High heels sound like somebody trying to walk on a world that isn't built for them. Click, click, click. I looked up from marking a drainage ditch and saw her standing at the split rail fence, hair cut short and sharp, white blouse too clean for a place with dirt, clipboard in her hand like it was part of her body. Marlene Buchanan, president of the Clearbrook Meadows Homeowners Association. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew exactly what she was the second I saw her. She smiled the way people smile when they have already decided they don't like you. "Good morning," she said. "Are you the property owner?" I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't look at me. She looked past me, at the road. "I'll make this brief," she said. "This land falls under Clearbrook Meadows Community Oversight. Any development, resurfacing, or construction requires advance review and approval by the HOA board. Her tone wasn't rude. It was casual authority, the kind that assumes the answer is already yes. I let her finish, then said, slow and even, "This stretch of land is mine. I have the property survey records, and the county confirmed the rest is unmaintained public right-of-way. HOA jurisdiction ends 71 feet east of here." She blinked once, a slow blink, like a computer trying to restart. "Our maps do not show that." I shrugged. "Then your maps are wrong." That got her attention. Not the words, the tone. Her eyes sharpened, just a little. "We'll need to review the documentation," she said. "I'll be glad to provide it," I replied. Not friendly, not hostile. Just solid ground. She didn't nod, didn't thank me, didn't say goodbye. She just turned around and walked back toward the road, heels clicking in a steady rhythm, like a metronome marking the beginning of something. Lane watched her leave and spit into the dirt. "Congratulations," he said. "You just stepped on a rattlesnake in church clothes." I didn't laugh, not because it wasn't funny, but because the way she looked at that road wasn't curiosity, it was ownership. And that's when I knew. They weren't just annoyed, they were already planning their next move. There's a certain kind of silence you only hear on land that's yours. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of belonging. A few days after that first conversation with Marlene, the road was finally ready. Not polished, not perfect, but solid. Gravel packed, slope clean, drainage cut right, edges tamped. A good, honest road, a working road. We didn't make a big thing out of it. No speeches, no ribbon cutting, no photos for social media, just work finishing, and a moment where the air felt still enough to hear the world say, "All right, go ahead." I remember getting in my truck that morning. The old Chevy isn't much to look at. Paint's fading, driver's seat squeaks, radio crackles when the bass hits. But it's walked me through more years than some friendships last. I eased it into first and rolled forward onto the new gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. That sound. I'll never forget it. Not just gravel under tires, but freedom, one stone at a time. Lane stood off to the side, leaning on a shovel, arms folded. He gave me a nod, the kind of nod men give when words would just cheapen the moment. Ellie jogged ahead so she could film it on her phone, not to post anywhere, just to remember. She smiled at me as I passed her, the same smile she used to have when she was 5, and convinced I could fix anything with a crescent wrench and patience. The road wound through the back pasture, crossed near the fence line, and ran straight out to the county highway. No detours, no speed bumps, no neighbors watching like hawks from their porch cameras, no sign telling me where I could or couldn't go. Just a direct line between my work and the world. When I reached the end, I didn't say anything, didn't cheer, didn't pump my fist. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel and breathed for the first time in months. Then I did something simple. I drove to town, not at dawn, not in the dead of night, in the middle of the afternoon. Bought feed, picked up parts, dropped off produce, talked to old friends at the co-op. No rush, no shame. No, planning my life around a rule made by people who'd never stepped foot in a barn. I came back while the sun was still up, 2 hours earlier than I would have if I'd had to loop through Clearbrook Meadows. When I pulled into the farmyard, the light was that late-day gold that makes everything look just a little like a memory. The fields glowed soft, the fences threw long shadows, the gravel sparkled like river stones. Ellie was already up on the ridge with Lane, sitting on the tailgate, legs dangling, 2 beers waiting. I climbed up beside them. We didn't talk much. Just watched the sun settle behind the tree line, the sky shifting through the long, slow colors of evening. Ellie leaned her head against my shoulder. "It feels different now," she said. "Yeah," I answered. She didn't mean the road, not really. She meant the knowing that we didn't have to ask anyone where we were allowed to go. That night I slept like a man whose world had just opened. I'd like to say I woke up the next morning feeling the same, but the truth is, peace never lasts long when someone else believes they own your freedom. And while we rested, while we breathed, while we let ourselves believe the work was done, someone else was making plans. Plans made in quiet rooms, behind closed doors, printed on paper. And the first sign of those plans was a sound I'll never forget. Metal, against metal, being driven into the earth. I heard it before I saw it. A hammer striking metal, sharp, repetitive, too purposeful to be farm work, too steady to be chance. Lane was the one who called me. "You better come down here," he said, voice low, the kind of low that means something's wrong. I took the truck, but halfway down the ridge I slowed to a crawl because I didn't want to see whatever I was about to see. Some part of me already knew. A man can feel when something of his is being taken. The road curved left around a stand of cottonwoods, and when the opening cleared, there it was. A steel gate, not a farm gate, not a simple chain across the road. No, this was commercial grade. Square steel posts sunk deep into fresh concrete, a keypad box with a digital display, reflective signage bolted tight and gleaming like the smile of someone who thinks they've already won. The sign read, "Clearbrook Access Management, LLC Authorized Vehicles Only Road Use Fee, $180 a month." My name wasn't on it. My farm wasn't on it. The county wasn't on it. Just that name, a company I'd never heard of. Ellie stood near Lane, arms folded, jaw tight. She didn't say a word. Her silence was louder than any shouting could have been. Lane kicked to the base of the post, not hard, just enough to show disgust. "They poured this in the night," he said. The concrete was still pale, not 3 days old. I walked up to the gate slow, not because I was afraid, because I was trying to understand how this could happen. Not in rumor, not in bureaucracy, but in steel, in physical, unignorable metal. There's a special kind of anger that doesn't come out as yelling. It comes out as stillness. I put my hand on the cold steel, not to open it, just to feel the insult. I didn't feel rage, not yet, just a sinking heaviness. Like someone had walked into my home while I slept and rearranged the furniture, not to steal, not to destroy, just to remind me they thought it they could. Ellie finally spoke. "They're blocking us out," she said softly. I nodded. Because there was no other explanation. This wasn't about safety, or regulations, or community standards. This was about control. Control of movement. Control of time. Control of survival. You cut off a farmer's road, you cut off the farm. There was a laminated sheet zip-tied to the gate with a QR code. I pulled it off and scanned it on my phone. A website opened, polished, professional, full of meaningless language. Community Ingress Flow Optimization, Safety Gating Initiative, Vehicular Compliance Alignment, but at the bottom, tiny print, registered to Clearbrook Access Management, LLC Managing Director, Gregory Buchanan, Marlene's husband. Of course, I didn't speak, I didn't curse, I didn't hit anything, I just breathed in slow. Ellie looked at me carefully. "Dad, what do we do?" I didn't know yet. But I knew the first rule my father ever taught me: never swing before you understand the fight. I took pictures, measurements, the concrete curing color, the bolt plate size, the angle of the fence tie-in to the property line, evidence. Because once you have evidence, you're not just angry, you're dangerous. Then I turned to Lane. "Get the truck," I said. He looked at me like he expected something different, something louder, something with more fists in it, but he nodded. A man knows when another man is making a decision he will not back down from. We drove back to the house. No music. No talking. Just the road. The same road that had felt like freedom the day before, now feeling like a throat with a hand wrapped around it. When we got home, I sat at the kitchen table. Ellie made coffee but didn't speak. Lane stood leaning against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, I said, "We're not cutting that gate down." They both stared at me. I continued, "We're going to bury them with proof." And that was when the anger finally settled into something solid. Not fire, not heat. Stone. They didn't come with pitchforks. They came with paper. By noon the next day, the feed store had copies of a flyer folded under the windshield wipers of half the trucks on Main Street. Same blurry photo of me, cropped so my face looked meaner, captioned, "Dangerous farmer endangering community safety." Someone had photoshopped red eyes into the picture like it was a horror poster. Then the Facebook group lit up. Clearbrook Meadows residents, 3,200 members, threads popping like popcorn, concern, outrage, finger-pointing. A neighbor I'd helped once when his tractor broke posted a comment wondering aloud if someone with that kind of attitude belonged next to family subdivisions. Another neighbor, quieter, messaged Ellie to say she'd personally seen men hauling in materials late at night near the gate. Emails came to the county too, anonymous, polite, worried. "We fear for the children," one read. "Heavy trucks at odd hours." They framed it like safety. They dressed a power play in worry and wrapped it tight. I didn't get loud. I didn't call them liars on Facebook. I didn't post any angry videos. That would have been theater, and I'm not trying to win internet arguments. I was trying to win a court case. So I did the boring, slow work that wins those. I printed everything. Every post, every flyer, screenshots with timestamps. I flagged usernames and saved URLs. I opened a manila folder and started sliding papers in like laying bricks. I scanned documents. I labeled images. I made margins. Ellie sat at the table with a laptop and an old scanner and turned our kitchen into a records office. Lane made a binder of vehicle sightings, plate numbers, dates, times. We called the feed store owner and asked if he remembered who'd been in on the morning the flyers appeared. He remembered. He handed over a name. Small things, but they stack. I called the sheriff's office. Calm, precise. Told them the gate had gone up overnight and that I wanted to file a report for unlawful obstruction of a public right-of-way. The deputy on the line was polite. He said they'd send someone. They took the report, wrote a number, and said it might take a few days, unless there's clear criminal activity, which is law talk for, we'll look into it when someone yells louder than an HOA complaint. So, we documented the yelling ourselves. I printed the county deed showing the easement. I pulled old maps, hard to find, yellowed PDFs from county archives that showed the right-of-way. Ellie cross-referenced parcel numbers until her eyes watered. Grace's voice, sharp and seasoned, echoed in my head. You bring receipts, you make them pay attention. Neighbors began to notice the folders. Judith Kramer, who lives 3 fences down and bakes pies for the church bake sale, dropped by with a paper grocery sack full of handwritten notes. "I kept these," she said. "People used to say things out loud in the store. I wrote them down." She handed us the sack with a solemn look, like she'd handed over family silver. Not everyone helped. Some waved us off. "Don't make trouble," one man advised, like trouble was a contagious disease. But others came by with small things. An anonymous camera pointing toward the gate the county worker had set up on his own porch. A bus driver who admitted she'd been quietly rerouting so her schedule wasn't upset. A neighbor who said he'd taken a photo of men there at midnight. Piece by piece, we were building something solid out of rumor. And the more we built, the less the flyers mattered, because paper lies fade. Proof doesn't. We kept working. We filed a formal complaint with the county. We kept our binder thick. We made copies. We made lists. We made sure our next move would be backed by something that would make a judge sit up straight. It's an unromantic part of fighting. No dramatic speeches, no confrontations, just folders and time and stubbornness. But if stubbornness had a blueprint, we were following it. And if they thought paperwork could scare us away, they didn't know the kind of stubbornness built into a man whose family buried their dead on this land. We weren't done yet. The night it happened, the air felt strange. You live long enough on a piece of land, you learn to feel it. Weather doesn't surprise you. Seasons don't surprise you. Even trouble has a certain smell before it arrives. That night, the sky was clear. No wind. No crickets. Just a stillness that pressed against the windows like something waiting. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Ellie and Lane, sorting documents into labeled stacks. County maps, pre-subdivision, plat survey, 1974 edition, gate photographs, community correspondence. The kind of work that scratches at your patience but pays off later. It was late, a little past 1 in the morning. Coffee had gone cold. The house felt tired. Then headlights rolled across the far fence line. Not fast, not casual, slow, controlled, intentional. Lane looked up first. "That ain't a neighbor," he said quietly. We stepped outside onto the porch. The night was so still you could hear the gravel settling in the ruts of the driveway. The vehicle idled by the old east entrance, the original road we'd been using before the new one was cleared. The entrance the HOA didn't control. The one we still depended on for deliveries. A diesel engine, mid-sized truck, maybe one of those rental-grade flatbeds, the kind used by landscaping companies or road crews. I watched it with my arms folded, not moving. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is just watch. 2 men hopped out. They didn't look around, didn't talk, didn't hurry, just worked. They dumped construction debris right across the entry. Chunks of broken concrete, splintered pallets, Asphalt scrap, cinder blocks, rebar, even old fencing wire twisted tight enough to tangle a tire. They'd planned it. This wasn't spur-of-the-moment vandalism. This was targeted obstruction. Cut the road off. Cut the farm off. I didn't yell. I didn't run down there. I didn't give them the reaction they wanted. Lane leaned forward on the railing. Want me to go down there? I shook my head. No. They want us to escalate. We don't give them that. So, we stood in silence, watching men who didn't own a single pebble of this land try to choke the life out of it. Ellie had her phone up, camera recording the entire time. Nothing shaky, no yelling, just evidence. Clean, clear, unarguable. When they finished, they didn't even drive away fast. They pulled off slow, headlights off, like they believed no one would dare follow. Maybe they believed we'd just give up. I looked at the pile blocking the entrance. It was nearly waist high, 10 or 12 feet across, tangled deliberately so machinery couldn't get in without time, fuel, labor, and cost. A farmer knows sabotage when he sees it. It wasn't meant to keep us out for a day. It was meant to break our will. We didn't sleep much. At sunrise, I got the tractor and the loader bucket. I didn't shout, didn't curse, didn't break down, just worked. Bucket up, load, carry, dump, again and again and again. The sun climbed, and my shirt stuck to my back, and sweat stung my eyes, but I didn't stop. People think rage is loud. It isn't. Rage is work. While I cleared, Ellie called the sheriff again. They sent 2 deputies this time, young men, boots too clean, hands too soft to have ever-cleared fence line. They took pictures, filed a report, said they'd look into it. Lane didn't bother hiding the bitterness in his voice when he asked, "Would you look into it faster if someone dumped that in front of your driveway?" The deputy shifted awkwardly, but didn't answer. When they left, we kept working. By late afternoon, we had 1 lane cleared enough for the pickup to squeeze through. I shut off the tractor and just stood there, hands resting on the loader arms, staring at the debris now piled in ragged heaps. Ellie walked over and rested her hand on my arm. "They were trying to make us angry," she said softly. I shook my head. "No. They were trying to make us tired. Because tired people stop fighting. Tired people compromise. Tired people say, maybe it's not worth it. Tired people give in. But there is something they didn't understand. This land wasn't just where we lived. This land was the reason we are who we are. And when someone threatens that, anger doesn't weaken you. It focuses you." That evening, as the light faded and the shadows stretched long across the gravel, I stood there looking at the entrance we had reopened with our own hands. And I realized something with a clarity so sharp, it felt like steel in my blood. This wasn't about a road. This was about whether I had the right to exist here, and I intended to prove that I did, with every document, every witness, every map, every hour of sweat, every ounce of stubbornness carried in my bones from the generations before me. The gate was their move. The debris was their warning. Now it was my turn. And I knew exactly who to call. I didn't call a lawyer. I called Grace Holloway. There's a difference. Most lawyers talk fast and bill faster. Grace walks like she has already seen the ending, and she's just giving the rest of us time to catch up. She pulled into the driveway the next morning in a faded gray Lincoln Town car, one of those old highway cruisers with a dent in the bumper and more miles on it than sense. The kind of car that says, "I don't need to impress you. I just need you to know I showed up." She stepped out wearing black jeans, boots that had seen courtrooms and cow pastures alike, and a blazer that looked like it had been hung on the back of a chair since 1998. Her hair was silver and tied back. Her eyes were sharp in the way only someone who has been lied to for 40 years can be. She didn't shake hands. She didn't smile. She just said, "Show me everything." We led her into the kitchen. The table was covered in paperwork, binders stacked, printouts spread, maps taped down, photos layered. She didn't sit right away. She just leaned over the table like a hawk looking down at a field mouse. I began explaining, but she lifted one hand, palm up, quiet, not unkind. Let the documents talk first. So we did. Ellie slid forward, survey maps, county easement records, time-stamped gate photos, HOA emails, the flyer, the screenshots, the sheriff's report number, Grace read silently. Her face didn't move, not even a twitch. When she did speak, it was the kind of voice that makes a man realize he is now holding a loaded weapon instead of a problem. "They don't have jurisdiction on that road." I nodded. They also don't have legal authority to charge fees for access, she continued. Another nod. She pointed at the gate picture with 2 fingers. And that right there is unlawful obstruction of a public access easement. It doesn't matter that it's unmaintained. If the easement exists, then access cannot be restricted without a county petition. She looked up, right at me, eyes steady. You didn't build a road. You just uncovered one the county had neglected. That means the law is on your side. I don't know if relief is the word for what I felt. It wasn't joy. And it sure wasn't victory. It was something closer to alignment, the kind of deep sense that the world, for the first time in months, had its weight distributed correctly. Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a yellow legal pad, the kind that looks ordinary until someone like her touches it. She started writing, short, direct, surgical, cease and desist, public access obstruction claim, formal demand for removal of unauthorized gating infrastructure, county easement enforcement petition, misuse of HOA funds. And then she wrote 2 words, slowly, discovery phase. Lane whistled under his breath. He knew what that meant. It meant we weren't just proving the gate was illegal. We were going to force them to turn over financial records, internal emails, HOA board voting logs, contractor invoices, and any agreements with Clearbrook Access Management, LLC, if they lied anywhere, ever. This was how we would find it. Grace looked up again. They're expecting you to get angry and do something stupid, Cole. They want you to break the gate. They want you to threaten someone. They want you to give them a headline. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already knew I wasn't going to. Then she looked at Ellie. You, keep gathering documentation. Everything. Save originals, mirror hard drives, date stamp screenshots, make 3 backups. She looked at Lane. You're our witness to the installation timeline. Keep your phone charged. Finally, she looked back to me. And you, she said, tapping her pen against the pad, don't flinch, not once. They will get louder before they get weaker. I nodded, because I understood. This wasn't going to be won by force of arms, or yelling matches, or who could post the most angry comments online. This was going to be won the same way a road is built, inches at a time, stone by stone, unshakable, unmoving, unyielding. Grace closed her notebook. We'll file tomorrow. And in that moment, the war stopped being emotional and became strategic. The thing about fights like this is, they don't start with shouting. They start with one person telling the truth. Ellie was the one who lit the match, though she didn't mean to. She took the video we had of the gate, just a slow, steady pan across the steel posts, the keypad, the sign with the 180 monthly access fee. No narration, no dramatic music, no yelling, just the gate, blocking a road, on land that had been ours long before Clearbrook Meadows existed. She uploaded it to her account with a single caption. They blocked the road to our farm. No hashtags, no complaining, just the fact. It sat there for about 6 hours. Then somebody else shared it. Then 3 more. Then a local Facebook group picked it up. Then a farming and rural life community page. Then someone reposted it on TikTok with the text overlay, "What would you do?" And the comments came. At first, just a handful. Then dozens. Then thousands. People in small towns. People who grew up on land. People who remembered their fathers fighting county easements or water boards or developers. Then came the comment that changed everything. If the gate is on private land, demolish it. It wasn't said by a lawyer, or an activist, or a politician, just a stranger, a regular person, saying the quiet part out loud. And that comment hit like thunder. Within a day, the video passed 400,000 views. Local news stations reached out. One radio host asked if I'd come on and tell my side. I didn't, not yet. Because Grace was right. The moment you speak, you give them something to twist. So I stayed silent. But other people didn't. Farmers in 3 neighboring counties shared the video. A rancher from 70 miles south commentated on it, saying, "They start with your driveway, then your fence, then your well, don't let them." Someone else dug up the company registration for Clearbrook Access Management, LLC, and posted a screenshot showing Gregory Buchanan as the registered agent. Then people inside Clearbrook Meadows started sharing things, not publicly, privately. Quiet messages, screenshots, meeting notes, budget rumors. and the line between us and them blurred into something more complicated. There were people inside the HOA who didn't agree with any of this. Not everyone wanted war. Not everyone believed in control for the sake of control. Then, 4 days after Ellie posted the video, we came home to find a grocery bag hanging from our gate. Inside, a USB drive. Printed emails meeting, minutes from the HOA board. A note written in shaky cursive. "She's been lying to us too. Don't let her take the town with her. J.K. Judith Kramer." I hadn't expected her to take a side, but there it was. Not a loud gesture, not a speech, not a rally. Just one person saying, "I know what the truth is, and I will not pretend otherwise." And that was the moment I realized. This wasn't just our fight anymore. It was everyone's who had ever been told, "This isn't yours. We decide for you." The fire was lit, and the wind was blowing in our direction. The HOA announced the meeting 3 days after the video went viral. They called it an Emergency Community Safety Discussion, which is HOA language for, "We are losing control and we need a stage." They planned to hold it in the Clearbrook Meadows Clubhouse, a 2-story building with white trim, wraparound porch, and a pair of American flags out front that looked patriotic enough to hide anything behind. I didn't want to go, not because I was afraid of them, but because I knew the trap. If I shouted, I lost. If I threatened, I lost. If I got angry, I lost. They wanted theatrics. They wanted the dangerous farmer narrative. But Grace insisted. "This isn't for them," she said, straightening her blazer. "This is for everyone watching." And people were watching. The video had crossed 1 million views by then. News vans were parked by the clubhouse mailbox. Local reporters leaned on camera tripods like buzzards waiting for something to die. Residents clustered in little knots around the grass, sipping iced tea from plastic cups, whispering in low tones that stopped whenever someone approached. Ellie walked beside me, lane behind us, arms loose, face unreadable. Grace moved like a surgeon walking into an operating room, calm, sharp, ready. When we stepped inside, the room was already full. Folding chairs in rows, fluorescent lights humming overhead. A long table at the front where the HOA board sat like royalty at a banquet they didn't pay for. Marlene sat in the center, hair perfect, blouse crisp, hands folded just so, but her eyes had the look of someone trying to hold a beach ball underwater, strain disguised as poise. The room settled when we entered. Some turned to stare, some nodded, quietly. Some folded their arms like a shield against the idea that they might be wrong. The meeting began with a gavel strike that sounded too loud for the room. "Thank you all for being here," Marlene said, smiling, voice sweet as corn syrup left in the sun. "A matter of public safety has arisen in our community." She gestured to a projector screen. The screen lit up with an aerial photo of my road, or rather, the HOA's version of my road. Colored overlays, shaded borders, lines drawn exactly where they needed them to be drawn in order to justify everything they'd done. "As you can see," she continued, "this access point falls under shared community jurisdiction. Unauthorized construction at this site violates subdivision preservation codes and risks increased traffic, dust, liability, and—" Grace stood up. She didn't interrupt loudly, just enough. "The County Land Surveyor's Office has already confirmed the opposite," she said. The room shifted, like cattle sensing a storm. Marlene smiled wider. "We will get to public comments shortly." Grace didn't sit. She slid a printed document onto the board table. "This is the original subdivision plat, registered 17 years ago. It clearly shows the HOA boundary ends 71 feet before the disputed roadway. The road falls on private agricultural land and unmaintained county right-of-way, which means this board has no jurisdiction over it." A murmur rolled across the room. Marlene didn't reach for the document. She didn't have to. Her husband, Gregory, sitting 2 seats down, did. His jaw tightened as he read. His face went a shade paler. Marlene kept smiling, but her voice lost 1 degree of warmth. "We were under the impression that the land had been reclassified." Grace placed a second sheet down. "There was an attempt to reclassify it, filed by Clearbrook Access Management, LLC, signed by your husband, denied by the county clerk's office, filed and denied on the same day." A louder murmur now, this one sharper. Someone whispered, not quietly, "She tried to do it behind the board's back?" Marlene tapped her gavel. "Let's maintain decorum. But the room wasn't hers anymore, not after that. One of the board members, older man, white hair, round glasses, cleared his throat. "Marlene, we didn't vote on that." His voice trembled, not with fear, with realization. Something cracked, not dramatic, not shouted, just cracked. Grace didn't raise her voice. Clearbrook Access is a shell company, formed 3 months ago, registered to a P.O. box, managed by your husband, drawing funds from HOA dues without board approval, all to construct that gate. She pointed toward the back of the room, where the video of the gate stood frozen on the projector screen, silent and damning. "This wasn't community protection," she said. "This was a private land grab, using HOA authority to pressure a forced sale." The room went still, dead still. Someone dropped a pen. Someone whispered, "I knew it." Someone else whispered, "My dues paid for that?" Then a voice rose from the back. Judith Kramer, the older woman who had left the grocery bag of evidence. She didn't stand up. She didn't need to. Her voice carried like a hymn in a church hall. "She hasn't been legally president for 2 years." Gasps, then chaos. Board members turning to one another, voices overlapping, people standing, hands in the air. Marlene slammed the gavel again. Bang, bang, bang. "Sit down." But the command didn't work anymore, because authority only exists as long as people believe in it. And in that moment, the room did not. Finally, I stood. Not to yell, not to accuse, just to speak like a man who has dirt under his nails and truth on his side. "I didn't want to fight," I said. "I just wanted to get feed to my farm." The room quieted. "I didn't build that road to make a point. I built it because my family depends on this land. And a gate, on my land or the county's, won't change that I have the right to live here, to work here, to go home." My voice wasn't loud, but it didn't waver. "I am not leaving. I am not selling. I am not bowing. Not now. Not ever." Silence. Full. Heavy. The kind of silence that holds a verdict. And then, the board voted. Not a dramatic vote. Not a tearful one. Just a simple count of raised hands. And Marlene was removed as HOA president. No applause, no cheering, just the soft, unmistakable sound of power leaving the room. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But the ground had shifted, and for the first time, it shifted in our direction. Courthouses don't look like justice. They look like paperwork. Gray walls, hard benches, coffee that tastes like it was filtered through cardboard, a metal detector that beeps at belt buckles older than the deputies running it. But justice lives there, if you know how to find it. And Grace did. We arrived early, not nervous, just ready. Ellie carried the evidence binders, 3 of them now, labeled Right-of-Way Documentation Gate Installation, HOA Financial Activity Lane came too. Not because we needed him, but because some fights require the people who stood in the dirt with you to be present when the truth comes out. Clearbrook's legal team sat across the aisle, 3 attorneys in expensive suits, cufflinks shining like they were afraid of being ignored. They spoke in low tones, tapping tablets, flipping pages they weren't really reading. Marlene wasn't there, neither was her husband. Their lawyers were. And that said enough. The judge entered, woman in her 50s, posture like granite, eyes that could sort truth from noise in under 10 seconds. Someone you couldn't charm, someone you couldn't talk circles around. Good. The clerk called the case. Grace stood. Not fast, not slow, just like someone who knew the floor belonged to her the second she opened her mouth. Your Honor, this is a matter of unlawful obstruction of a public access easement, misappropriation of HOA funds, and attempted coercive pressure to force a landowner to divest property. No theatrics, just the knife laid gently on the table. The opposing lawyer rose, smiling the kind of smile people learn at private schools and golf course lunches. Your Honor, this is simply a misunderstanding. The gate was installed in good faith to protect the community from unregulated construction traffic. The HOA acted out of safety concerns. Grace slid a document onto the evidence table. Not dramatically, just precisely. This is the county plat map. It shows the HOA jurisdiction boundary ending before the roadway in question. The judge leaned forward, looked once, looked again. The opposing lawyer's smile flickered. Grace placed a second document. This is the denied reclassification request submitted by Clearbrook Access Management LLC. Same day, filed and rejected. The request attempted to claim authority over land they did not possess legal standing to manage. The judge raised her eyebrows. The opposing lawyer shifted. Grace placed a third document. This one hit like a hammer. This is the LLC registration. Clearbrook Access is wholly controlled by the spouse of the former HOA president. HOA payments to this entity constitute unlawful expenditure of community dues without board vote or resident consent. Murmurs. Even the gallery absorbed that one. The opposing lawyer tried to pivot. Even if mistakes were made in communication, the gate itself was installed only to ensure appropriate. Grace didn't raise her voice. Your Honor, here is the internal HOA memo outlining a deliberate strategy to restrict road access to apply pressure, encouraging property sale. Silence, not shocked silence, recognizing silence. The sound of a truth landing. The judge held out her hand. The clerk brought the document. She read it slowly. Her jaw tightened 1 millimeter. That was the verdict forming. The opposing lawyer tried one last angle. Your Honor, we believe emotions are being misinterpreted as intent. The situation escalated beyond. The judge cut him off. Counselor, the documentation speaks clearly. Sit down. He sat. And then it was my turn to speak. I didn't stand to make a speech. I just stood because that's what my father taught me to do when something mattered. Your Honor, I built the road because I needed to reach my farm. I didn't ask them for anything. Not permission, not approval, not funds. I built it on my land and the county land they had neglected. They didn't block a road. They blocked my ability to work, to deliver feed, to run my farm, to take care of my family. My voice didn't break, but it wasn't smooth either. It was true. All I want is the right to go home, without paying someone who never earned it. The judge didn't respond right away. She didn't have to. Everyone in that courtroom knew the ruling before she spoke, but when she did, it was clean, sharp, undeniable. The gate is to be removed within 72 hours, at the expense of Clearbrook Access Management, LLC. The HOA is barred from asserting jurisdiction over the roadway. Damages for restricted agricultural operation will be awarded to the plaintiff. A formal inquiry into financial misconduct will proceed. She struck the gavel once, not loud, but final. Grace exhaled through her nose, a quiet victory. Ellie squeezed my hand. Lane's shoulders dropped, like someone had just lifted a sack of feed off him that he'd been carrying since the day the road began. The opposing lawyers packed their sleek bags in silence, and I walked out of that courthouse the same way I walked into it, calm, grounded, certain. Justice doesn't always come with cheering. Sometimes it comes with a piece of paper and a door closing behind you. The fight wasn't dramatic anymore. It was decided, and now all that was left was to take the gate down. They didn't make an announcement, no notices, no apologies, no speeches, just a county work truck rolling slowly down the gravel one quiet Thursday morning. I was sitting on the porch with a mug of black coffee, the kind that tastes like it came out of a shop-class toolbox, when I heard the diesel engine ease up the road. Not hurried, not timid, just steady. Ellie stepped out beside me. Lane followed, hands in pockets, hat pushed low to shield the sun. 3 county workers climbed out. No questions, no hesitation. One tipped his chin at me. Here for the removal. I nodded once. Concrete saws in the truck, he added, as if he needed to explain. This might take a little time. I've waited longer, I said. We walked with them. No crowd, no cameras. Just the 5 of us, boots crunching on gravel. Early sun pouring gold over the tree line. The gate looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how things shrink when their power is gone. Last month, it had been a wall, a threat, a message. This is not yours. Now it was just metal in the way. The workers set up a portable generator. One of them marked the concrete footings with chalk. Another braced the gate so it wouldn't fall when the cuts were made. Then the saw started. High-pitched, shrill, sparks snapping up like fireflies. The sound wasn't pleasant. It wasn't cinematic. It was work. Simple. Necessary. I watched as steel bolts loosened, as concrete gave way, as the posts fell just a little when the supports came out. The workers lowered everything carefully, respectful, not of the gate, but of the job. When the last hinge bolt came free, the gate sagged, shifted, then settled flat into the bed of the flatbed truck with a dull, final thud. Just like that, the road was open again. No applause, no victory shout, just the quiet, breathed-out truth of restoration. The oldest county worker, must have been pushing 60, wiped his forehead with a bandana and said, "Shame it came to this." I looked down the open road, our road, the one we carved from roots and rock and old stubborn earth. "No," I said, "it came exactly to where it needed to." He nodded. Not because he agreed, because he understood. They packed up. The truck rolled away, the dust settled. We stood there for a long moment, me, Ellie, and Lane, just looking, not at what was gone, at what remained. Freedom has a shape. Sometimes it's a road. Ellie was the one who broke the quiet. "You know the county's gonna ask about naming it, right?" Lane smirked. "Well, we ain't calling it Clearbrook Drive Extended." Ellie nudged me. "So, what do you want to call it?" I didn't need to think. It wasn't something to decide. It was something that already was. "My father walked this land long before any of this," I said. "He's the reason I'm here, the reason I didn't fold, the reason we fought." I looked down the road, sunlight stretching across the gravel like a ribbon unfurling toward tomorrow. "Grayson Trail," I said. Not dramatic, not ceremonial, just correct. The name felt right in the air, like it belonged there all along. A week later, the county installed the sign. Simple white post, green reflective plate, white letters, Grayson Trail. I didn't take a picture. I didn't send it to anyone. I didn't post. I didn't brag. I just drove the road, slow. Windows down, wind warm, the engine quiet and sure, past the fields, past the line of old cottonwoods, past the place the gate used to stand. No hesitation. And when I reached the highway, I didn't turn around. I just sat there for a moment, one hand on the wheel, watching cars pass in both directions. No rush, no pressure, no walls, just choice. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't even about the road. It was about keeping the ground under your own feet from being taken. And as long as I'm breathing, no one is taking this land. Not with paperwork, not with gates, not with whispers or meetings or maps drawn in rooms I'm not invited to. This land outlasted all of them, and so will I.